Hey everybody, Miles Big Shirt Keep here. Today we're going to be breaking down track 16 on my album Missing in Action, titled The Things We Lose. Compared to a lot of the tracks on the album, Things We Lose is extremely atypical. It doesn't really follow a standard song structure of repeated choruses and verses, rather it just kind of develops and then ends. It starts kind of like a novel, with a very subdued introduction full of contextualization, minimalism, I guess, with just the piano, and then it grows and grows as more instruments are added in, with a guitar, with strings, all to finally reach the climax, which is this huge orchestral statement to then fall to kind of bring the listener back to where they began. Things We Lose is definitely a very personal and emotional track. I wish I picked a more upbeat one to kind of begin with, but it's not just a track about loss. I think even more it's a track about resilience. And I'll explain that when we break down the lyrics a little bit. Let's look at the instrumental. Things We Lose began with a piano recording I had every intention of deleting. I was sitting in a practice room one day trying to come up with the music for this idea of a song that I had. I sat in a practice room, just played piano. I recorded for like 15 minutes and I hated it. But a lot of the piano parts that ended up in the final song were from that first recording that I hated. So if there's any lesson to be learned from that, it is to always save what you create, because you never know when or where you're going to use it. Things We Lose has like 7 main parts, and I've put them all here. There's an intro, a verse, a second verse, the rise, the climax, the fall, and the goodbye. The song starts with that same piano all by itself in a D major chord, which then transitions to a G major chord. That's a 1-4, and it sounds like this. Something to note about this, I also have a volume automation happening. So it sounds more like a swell of those chords. You don't get the initial transients, the initial impact of the piano hit, just the kind of resonance and reverb that happens. And part 2 is where the first vocals of the piece come in. And I kind of introduced that with a reverse piano chord, which sounds like this. And then it's also met with a little crash cymbal for the percussion. And I opted to put that in because this whole introduction isn't very quantized, so there's no real sense of where the beat is. There's no metronome, there's no click. So I wanted to put in some kind of percussive element just to kind of hint to your ears where 1 is, because you're not going to be reminded until part 3 when the actual drums come in. The chords in this song follow what I call a cascaded-root progression. In these first notes from the piano, we start with the D major, again, coming in on 1 and 3. But then after that, in our D major triad, we then shift the D down to C sharp, which makes it into an inverted F sharp minor triad. And then I do it once more, shifting the C sharp down to a C, making it an A minor 6 chord. And finally resolving back to G major, R4. Part 3, we add in drums, we also add in a bass, and we also add in the guitar, which sounds like this. The big thing at the back of my mind while arranging this introduction was to be extremely conservative with the frequencies that are being utilized. What do I mean by that? Those are big words. You'll find in these first parts that the only instrumentation comes in the higher tessitura. We're getting high piano, we're getting high vibraphone, and that's kind of it. There is no low end at all. And the rationale behind doing that is it leaves some kind of instrumentation to be desired later in the song. Moving along to part 3 is when we make those satisfying additions in adding a bass to fill that lower end that wasn't there before. Adding in drums to give your ears a click to hold on to. In addition to just more complexity. This is a very progressive arrangement where things get added through the duration of the piece. and we'll see that in this next part here. I'll show you what this guitar sounds like. I'm not a very good guitar player, however, it's just it's very quiet, it sits in the background, and it's a small but necessary piece. I'll play it on its own just to show you how bad I am. That's what that sounds like. In this next part, we complicate the arrangement even further with the addition of cellos. But my favorite addition of this part is definitely the extremely high tuba part, which sounds like this. If you've ever seen the movie Treasure Planet, that's a pretty common artiste? Hey guys, editor Miles here. It's motif. I'm stupid. In that movie's soundtrack, I just love it, and I had to include it just as kind of a nod. Finally, this is the big impact part of the song. This is my favorite part of the song, is the climax, which sounds like this. Part of what makes this so fast-paced and climactic, I think, are these little clarinet parts and oboe. I'll show you the clarinet by itself. So if you've listened to any of Cody Fry's music, I took a lot of inspiration from him on how he complicates a climax of a song with a lot of eighth notes, a lot of busyness, a lot of different harmonics from different instruments. So we have, in addition to this clarinet, which I love clarinet, it is the ultimate woodwind. I also have an oboe here doing its own little eighth note melody. In addition to that, we have more strings coming in. And I talked about the importance of being conservative in arranging. This part of the song is kind of just like letting it all fly. Every instrument I introduced at the beginning is now showing up once again for this big kind of ending. So we have the strings together, we have, of course, the woodwinds being added, we have the bass continuing, we have the drums strengthening. At the beginning of the song, it was more of like a brushed and a light kick. Now we're on the snare with some hi-hats. And it's just this big moment because of its complexity, but also because of its control. Last thing I want to talk about is this high tuba, once again, that it kind of leads us into this big moment. And then, of course, after this big moment, it falls at the end, in part 6, where we lose our strings, we lose our woodwinds, we lose our percussion once again, just to be met with the piano that we began with. And at this point of the song, it just kind of relaxes and expands and simplifies until the very end, to where it then just fades out with this little piano solo at the end. And that's the song. And that last note there, it's pretty common to end on some note of the triad, but I actually end on the 4th. In terms of context, I wanted it to end with a little bit of curiosity. And that's what I kind of feel suspended 4th sounds like. I don't want to act like this song is super profound and needs a lot of explanation. It definitely doesn't. The lyrics pretty much are exactly what they say. This segment, I'm hoping, is more beneficial for those who want to know about where they came from, the origin, the context of my words, in addition to my very subpar a cappella singing voice. Enjoy. Pardon me for not trusting you always. It's hard to let go of things that you've lost times before. Things We Lose is a song about someone feeling the lasting effects of a goodbye. I think a good example of this story I'm trying to tell would be the conflict of a lost dog. In the future, you'll get a new dog, but that dog will wear a leash. Not because of anything that they did specifically, but the previous losses made you hold things much closer now. And while there are certainly a lot of good implications of that, I think there are just as many bad. I've been remembering the mind picks the worst things. The best become worse things when you don't have them anymore. I don't have a lot to say about these lines in particular, just in that it's just kind of like a clever wordplay on how we characterize memories when the context beneath them changes. Past memories definitely change in meaning as you grow older, as you learn more about what they mean, as you learn more about who you were back then. Yeah, but I don't have a lot to say about that one. What am I to do or say? I know I'm not a perfect man, but if I got to see those days again, I doubt I'd change. I think a lot of people would speculate on, oh, I wish I could go back then and I wish I could change that. Or Drake has the line of going back to live something a second time. And while I've had those thoughts, this line kind of speculates on, like, if you really got the chance to go back, how much would you really be able to take from that? How much would you be able to grow from that experience? I feel like the ability to time travel back removes any kind of consequence in life. And even if it is to live something a second time, what is memory then? So it's kind of like this contemplation of the pointlessness of time travel, and how if I got to go back to this better time that I'm referencing, this better time that I can't get myself over, how much would I really change? I should instead be focusing my time and moving on rather than trying to go backwards. It's only me right now, but before that's how it ever was. It's hard to be like how it was now. This line talks about learning to be alone again. And like any change in life, it's uncomfortable at the beginning, but also you're born alone. And you'll leave this world alone as well. So it's a key part of life, but it's still so uncomfortable at times when you're least expecting it. We all are chasing cars, I know. But soon you'll have to let them go. I finally think I'm letting go. Chasing cars are a metaphor for the problems a lot of us are endlessly running after. The big challenge I had in writing this song was, how can I have a message of letting things go without sounding super preachy? That's why I wanted to turn it to myself at the very end. I think the only way you can give any kind of advice, any kind of instruction, is to preface it with how it affected you. I know you can get through this, because I never thought I could, but I'm almost there. This video took so much work to make. Oh my god. It was definitely a lot of fun, so thanks for watching. I hope you learned something from me. Let me know if you want to see any more of these, any songs on the album that you want me to break down. Now that I'm home, of course, I have the ability to make these when I have free time, so be on the lookout. But thanks for watching. Catch you on the flip.